Pain isn't just something to endure, it's raw material waiting to be transformed. What if I told you that your deepest wounds contain the blueprint for your greatest strengths? The moments that broke you could actually be the foundation of who you're meant to become. Most people stay trapped in their pain, but you're about to discover how to transmute it into personal power. This isn't about positive thinking or suppressing your feelings. This is emotional alchemy, a radical process that turns lead into gold, trauma into triumph. In the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly how to harness the energy of your suffering and redirect it toward creating the life you truly want. Your pain has a purpose. Let's uncover it together. Transforming emotional pain into wisdom. Part 1. The witness method. Have you ever felt trapped by your emotions, like you're drowning in a sea of pain with no way out? We've all been there. That feeling when your heart is racing, your mind is spiraling, and you can't seem to escape the gravitational pull of suffering. But what if I told you that the way most people handle emotional pain is actually making it worse? What if the solution isn't fighting against your feelings or trying to escape them, but approaching them in a completely different way? The truth is, most of us were never taught how to properly process our emotions. We were told to get over it or look on the bright side, but these approaches often leave the pain festering beneath the surface, waiting to erupt later. Today, I'm sharing 10 powerful methods that have helped thousands transform their deepest pain into their greatest wisdom. These aren't quick fixes or temporary band-aids, they're profound shifts in how you relate to your emotional experience. The first of these transformative approaches is what I call tip 1 of 10, the witness method. The witness method is revolutionary in its simplicity. Instead of identifying with your pain, becoming your anger, your grief, your anxiety, you learn to observe it like watching clouds pass across the sky. This creates a crucial space between you and your emotions, allowing you to respond thoughtfully rather than react impulsively. Think about the last time you were overwhelmed by emotion. Maybe you said something you regretted, made a decision you later questioned, or simply felt paralyzed. In those moments, you weren't witnessing your emotions, you were completely fused with them. Here's how to practice the witness method. When you notice an intense emotion arising, pause. Take a deep breath. Then imagine stepping back and watching this feeling as if it were happening to someone else. Notice the sensations in your body without the mental story about what they mean. Where do you feel tightness? Heaviness? Heat? Try saying to yourself, I notice I'm feeling anger right now, instead of I am angry. This subtle shift in language creates psychological distance that is incredibly powerful. The magic of this approach is that it works with any emotion. Whether you're dealing with heartbreak, professional rejection, or existential anxiety, the witness method helps you experience these feelings without being consumed by them. Many people resist this technique because they believe that creating distance from their emotions means numbing themselves or becoming cold. But that's not it at all. The witness method actually allows you to feel your emotions more fully because you're no longer afraid of being overwhelmed by them. You can dive deeper precisely because you know you won't drown. Start small. Practice with minor irritations before applying this to your deepest wounds. Notice how your relationship with difficult emotions begins to change. They become messengers rather than tormentors, information rather than identity. The most profound shift happens when you realize that you are neither your thoughts nor your emotions. You are the awareness that experiences them. This is the foundation for all emotional alchemy, and it's available to you right now, in this very moment. The witness method isn't just a technique, it's a path to freedom. Freedom from being hijacked by your emotions. Freedom to choose your response rather than be driven by reaction. Freedom to transform pain into wisdom. And this is just the beginning of our journey together. Part 2. Emotional archaeology. Have you ever noticed that what you think you're feeling isn't always the whole story? Maybe you lash out in anger only to realize later that you were actually feeling hurt or afraid. If you've ever found yourself dealing with the same emotional reactions over and over again, despite your best efforts to change, there's likely something deeper at play. Most of us only interact with the surface level of our emotions, the obvious feelings that present themselves first. But beneath these surface reactions lie deeper emotional truths waiting to be discovered. These hidden layers hold the key to transforming how you experience your emotional life forever. What if you could develop the skill to excavate your own emotional terrain, uncovering rich insights that have been buried beneath years of conditioning and protection? This is where our second transformative approach comes in. Let me introduce you to emotional archaeology. Is exactly what it sounds like, the practice of digging beneath surface feelings to uncover their true roots. It's about becoming a detective of your own emotional experience, tracing each reaction back to its source with curiosity rather than judgment. Here's what makes this approach so powerful. What appears on the surface is rarely the whole truth. What looks like anger might actually be protection for vulnerability. What presents as indifference might be disappointment in disguise. What feels like anxiety might actually be excitement without an outlet. The key to this practice is a technique I call 3 levels deep. When you notice a strong emotional reaction, ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Name that first emotion. Then ask, what's beneath this feeling? Notice what arises and name that second layer. Finally, ask again, and what's beneath this? This third layer often reveals the core truth that's been hiding. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're upset because your friend cancelled plans at the last minute. First level, I'm annoyed they're so inconsiderate. Second level, I'm disappointed because I was looking forward to this. Third level, I'm feeling unimportant, like my time doesn't matter. That third level, that's where the gold is. That's where healing can begin. Another powerful question to unearth deeper emotional truths is, when was the first time I felt this way? Often, our current reactions are echoes of much earlier experiences. The intensity of your response to a minor rejection might be carrying the weight of every rejection you've experienced since childhood. As you practice emotional archaeology, approach yourself with compassion. These buried emotions have often been hidden for good reason. They were too painful to face at the time they first arose. But now, with your adult resources and perspective, you can finally meet them with the understanding they've always needed. Keep a journal of your discoveries. Over time, you'll start to see patterns emerge, specific triggers that consistently activate certain emotional sequences for you. This awareness alone can be transformative, allowing you to pause and choose a different response when these triggers arise. Remember, the goal isn't to judge your emotions or to rid yourself of difficult feelings. The goal is understanding, deep, compassionate understanding of your emotional landscape. This understanding is what transforms pain into wisdom. By becoming an archaeologist of your own emotional experience, you develop an invaluable skill, the ability to distinguish between what you feel and who you are. Your emotions are not your identity. They're information, guidance, and opportunities for profound growth. And as we'll see with our next method, they're also tremendous sources of energy waiting to be channeled. Part 3. Redirected Energy Principle. Have you ever noticed how emotionally charged experiences seem to vibrate with a special kind of intensity? Whether it's heartbreak, rejection, or disappointment, these painful moments contain an unmistakable power. Most people try to suppress this energy or let it explode outward. But what if there was another option entirely? What if the very energy of your pain could become the fuel for your greatest contributions? This isn't positive thinking or wishful dreaming. It's a fundamental principle of emotional transformation that masters of human potential have understood for centuries. I'm excited to share with you. Here's the core insight. Pain generates enormous energy. This is energy that's already present in your system. It's a given, a reality you're experiencing right now. The question isn't whether this energy exists, but what you'll do with it. Most people unconsciously choose one of two paths. They either direct this energy inward, which leads to depression, self-criticism, and withdrawal, or they direct it outward in destructive ways through rage, blame, and lashing out. But there's a third option, a transformative option. you can consciously redirect this powerful energy into something constructive, even beautiful. This is how grief becomes service, how rejection becomes art, how failure becomes innovation. This isn't about denying your pain or pretending everything is fine. It's about honoring your experience by using its energy purposefully. Think of it like this. Emotional energy, even painful energy, is neutral in itself. It's like electricity, tremendously powerful, and neither good nor bad on its own. It all depends on how you channel it. The same electrical current that can harm can also heal, illuminate, and transform. Here's how to put the redirected energy principle into practice. First, acknowledge the pain you're feeling without judgment. Feel it fully in your body. Next, visualize this feeling as pure energy, perhaps as light, color, or vibration. Finally, consciously choose where to direct this energy. Some of history's greatest contributions came from redirected pain. Great music, literature, social movements, medical advances, countless breakthroughs have emerged from someone choosing to channel their suffering into creation rather than destruction. Start small. Maybe the frustration from a difficult conversation becomes energy for your workout. Perhaps the sadness of a loss becomes the tenderness you bring to helping others. The anger at injustice becomes fuel for positive change in your community. What makes this principle so powerful is that it honors both your experience and your agency. You're not denying what happened or how you feel about it. You're simply making a sovereign choice about what happens next. This practice transforms your relationship with difficult emotions. Instead of fearing them or being overwhelmed by them, you begin to recognize them as potent energy sources that can be directed toward your highest intentions. The redirected energy principle doesn't just change how you handle pain, it changes who you become through your pain. It ensures that no difficult experience is ever wasted. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every loss contains within it the seeds of creation, waiting for you to plant them intentionally. And as you'll discover with our next method, how you interpret your painful experiences is just as important as what you do with their energy. Part 4. Meaning-making framework. Have you ever wondered why some people seem broken by their difficulties while others emerge stronger? Why similar challenges crush one person but transform another? The difference isn't in what happens to us, but in the story we tell about what happens. We've all experienced those moments that split our lives into before and after. A relationship ending, a career setback, a health diagnosis, or a personal loss. These moments can define us, but not in the way most people think. It's not the event itself that shapes our future, but the meaning we assign to it. This brings us to: here's a profound truth that can change everything. We suffer twice. Once from the pain itself, and again from our story about it. The first type of suffering may be unavoidable, but the second is entirely within our control. It's the difference between pain and suffering. Pain happens, but suffering comes from the narrative we wrap around that pain. Think about it this way. Two people experience the same job loss. One sees it as evidence of their inadequacy and unworthiness. I'll never succeed. The other views it as a necessary redirection. This is clearing the path for something better aligned with my purpose. Same event, radically different meanings, and therefore completely different emotional experiences and outcomes. The meaning-making framework isn't about forced positive thinking or denying reality. It's about consciously choosing a narrative that serves your growth rather than unconsciously accepting one that keeps you stuck. It's about asking better questions that lead to more empowering interpretations instead of "why did this happen to me?" Try asking "what if this happened for me?" instead of "how could they do this to me?" Consider "what is this teaching me about myself?" rather than "why am I always struggling?" Explore how is this struggle preparing me for what's next? This shift from victim to creator, from passive recipient to active meaning maker, changes everything. When you create a narrative where you're the hero of your story rather than the victim, you reclaim your power in even the most challenging circumstances. Let me share a simple but powerful exercise to practice this framework. Take a painful experience from your past and write down the meaning you've been giving it. Now, with compassion for yourself, ask, is this the only way to interpret what happened? What other meanings could this hold? If this were happening in the life of someone I love, what meaning might I suggest they consider? Our brains naturally look for evidence to support whatever meaning we've assigned. If you believe rejection means you're unlovable, your mind will diligently gather all the evidence that confirms this belief while filtering out anything that contradicts it. But when you consciously choose a new meaning, your brain begins collecting evidence for that interpretation instead. The beauty of the meaning-making framework is that it honors both truth and possibility. You're not denying what happened or how difficult it was. You're simply recognizing that multiple interpretations exist, and some serve your healing and growth better than others. This isn't just philosophical, it's neurological. The stories we tell literally reshape our brains through neuroplasticity. A victim narrative strengthens neural pathways of helplessness and fear. A growth narrative builds pathways of resilience and possibility. By taking ownership of the meaning you assign to your experiences, you transform from being at the mercy of circumstances to becoming the author of your life story. This doesn't happen overnight, it's a practice, a skill that deepens with time and intention. And as you'll discover with our next method, your recurring emotional challenges aren't random. They contain a hidden pattern that reveals your life's most important lessons. Part 5. Pattern recognition. Have you ever found yourself thinking, why does this keep happening to me? Maybe it's always ending up in relationships with unavailable partners, or repeatedly facing the same conflicts at work despite changing jobs, or continuing to struggle with the same insecurities despite your best efforts to overcome them. These recurring patterns aren't random, and they aren't punishments. They're actually one of the most powerful growth opportunities available to you, if you know how to recognize and work with them. Most people miss the deeper significance of their repeated challenges, seeing them only as bad luck or personal failings. But what if these patterns are actually precise, personalized lessons designed specifically for your evolution? This insight brings us to pattern recognition is based on this fundamental truth. Your recurring emotional wounds reveal your life's curriculum. We each have unique patterns of pain that show up again and again, not because we're doing something wrong, but because these specific challenges contain our deepest lessons and ultimately our greatest gifts. Think of it like this. If you struggle with abandonment, your curriculum might be learning secure attachment and self-trust. If you repeatedly face rejection, your curriculum might be developing unshakable self-worth and authentic self-expression. If you often feel unseen, your curriculum might be claiming your voice and presence in the world. The first step in pattern recognition is simply noticing. Start paying attention to the emotional wounds that seem to occur repeatedly in your life. When do you feel most triggered? What situations consistently bring up your deepest insecurities or fears? What story do you find yourself telling over and over? As you identify these patterns, approach them with curiosity rather than judgment. Instead of thinking, "What's wrong with me that this keeps happening?" ask, what might this pattern be trying to teach me? What skill or quality am I being invited to develop through this recurring challenge? Here's a powerful exercise to help you practice pattern recognition. Make a list of your 3 most painful recurring emotional experiences. For each one, ask yourself, if this pattern were deliberately designed to help me grow, what would it be teaching me? What strength would it be building in me? What limiting belief might it be asking me to release? What makes pattern recognition so transformative is that it reframes your most difficult experiences from random suffering to meaningful development. Your pain is no longer pointless, it's purposeful. Your struggles aren't signs of failure, they're opportunities for your unique genius to emerge. Consider some of history's most impactful figures. Maya Angelou transformed the pain of trauma and racism into profound wisdom and lyrical truth-telling. Viktor Frankl's experience in concentration camps became the foundation for an entire therapeutic approach focused on meaning. Their greatest contributions emerged directly from their deepest wounds. Your patterns of pain aren't just challenges to overcome, they're pointing toward your unique gift to the world. The very areas where you've suffered most are often where you'll eventually have the most to offer others. This doesn't mean you were meant to suffer, or that pain is somehow good in itself. It simply means that when pain does occur, It can serve a purpose beyond itself if we're willing to work with it consciously. As you become more skilled at pattern recognition, you'll start to spot your patterns earlier, respond to them more intentionally, and extract their wisdom more efficiently. What once took years of repeated painful lessons might eventually be learned through brief moments of awareness. And as we'll explore in our next method, transforming your relationship with these patterns often requires not just mental understanding, but symbolic representation that speaks to your deeper mind. Part 6. Symbolic Transformation Ritual. Have you ever noticed how sometimes knowing something intellectually doesn't change how you feel about it? You can understand why you shouldn't be affected by something, yet still feel its emotional grip. This happens because deep transformation requires more than just understanding. It needs to engage your whole being, mind, body, heart, and spirit. Throughout human history, across every culture and tradition, people have used ritual and symbolism to process profound emotional experiences. These practices speak to parts of ourselves that rational thought alone cannot reach. They communicate with the subconscious mind, which often holds the key to our deepest patterns and most powerful changes. This brings us to the symbolic transformation ritual is about creating a physical ceremony that represents your alchemical process, your journey of turning emotional lead into gold. It's about making your inner transformation tangible, visible, and embodied through symbolic action. Here's why this works. Your subconscious mind thinks in symbols and speaks the language of metaphor. When you create an external representation of your inner journey, you're communicating directly with the deeper parts of yourself that actually drive your emotional responses and behaviors. The core of this practice is creating a physical ritual that symbolizes transforming something representing your pain into something beautiful or meaningful. This could be as simple or elaborate as feels right to you. For example, you might write a letter expressing all your pain, grief, or resentment about a situation, then ceremonially burn it and use the ashes to mix with soil where you plant new seeds or flowers, literally transforming pain into new life. Or you might take an object that represents a limiting belief or painful memory and physically transform it into an art piece that expresses your growth and healing. The specific form your ritual takes matters less than the meaning it holds for you. The key elements are acknowledging the pain or difficulty, releasing what no longer serves you, and creating or embracing something new that represents your transformed relationship with the experience. These rituals can mark important transitions and help us integrate difficult experiences. When we go through major life changes, endings, beginnings, losses, or realizations, our minds need help processing and honoring these shifts. Ritual provides that container, giving form to formless emotional experiences. You might be thinking this sounds too mystical or abstract, but symbolic rituals are actually part of everyday human experience. From birthday candles to graduation ceremonies, from wedding rings to memorial services, we instinctively use symbolic acts to mark and process significant emotional events. The power comes from creating rituals that are personally meaningful to you. What symbols, elements, or actions would authentically represent your unique transformational journey? Water for cleansing, fire for purification, earth for grounding, air for new beginnings. What materials or objects hold significance in your specific situation? As you design your ritual, bring full presence and intention to the process. Create an environment that supports the meaning of your ceremony, perhaps with music, candles, nature, or whatever helps you feel connected to the significance of what you're doing. You may feel self-conscious at first. That's natural in a culture that often prioritizes rational thought over symbolic expression. But allow yourself to experiment. These practices have supported human emotional processing for thousands of years because they work at levels beyond our conscious understanding. The symbolic transformation ritual helps you embody the truth that transformation is not just something you think about. It's something you do, something you experience, something you become. It bridges the gap between intellectual insight and lived reality. And as we'll discover with our next method, the final piece of truly transforming pain into wisdom often involves sharing your journey with others who need it most. Part 7. The Community Mirror. Have you ever noticed how explaining something to someone else helps you understand it better yourself? or how sharing your story somehow makes it clearer in your own mind. There's something powerful that happens when we externalize our internal journeys, something that completes the circle of transformation in a way nothing else can. Most approaches to personal growth focus solely on individual work, missing the crucial final step that anchors and amplifies our transformation. This essential component is what brings us to. The community mirror principle recognizes a profound truth. Sharing your transformation with others who need it most doesn't just help them, it fundamentally completes your own healing process. Teaching what you've learned solidifies your transformation and creates ripple effects of healing that extend far beyond yourself. Think about it this way. When pain remains private, its transformation stays theoretical. But when you articulate your journey for others, you must clarify your understanding, organize your insights, and embody your growth in a way that makes it real and accessible. The very act of sharing crystallizes your wisdom. This doesn't mean you need to become a public speaker or write a book, though you might. The community mirror can take many forms. It might be mentoring someone facing challenges you've overcome, participating in a support group where you both receive and offer insights, creating art that expresses your journey, or simply having honest conversations where you share what you've learned through your difficulties. The key is finding the right community, people who can truly benefit from your specific journey and lessons. Your unique path of transformation has prepared you to speak directly to certain struggles in a way no one else can. Your hard-won wisdom is the exact medicine someone else desperately needs. There's something almost magical about this principle. When you help others transform their relationship with the very pain that once defined you, your own relationship with that pain transforms again. The wound that was once just your burden becomes your bridge to profound connection with others. This isn't about having everything figured out or presenting yourself as perfectly healed. Quite the opposite. It's about authentic sharing from wherever you are in your journey. Often, the most powerful community mirror comes from someone just a few steps ahead on the path, who still remembers clearly what the struggle feels like. Here's a simple way to practice the community mirror. Identify one insight or practice that's been most helpful in your emotional transformation journey. Then, find one person who might benefit from this wisdom and share it with them. Not as advice or instruction, but as your lived experience. Notice how articulating it changes your relationship to the insight itself. What makes this principle so powerful is that it transforms the meaning of your suffering a final time. What began as seemingly pointless pain becomes purposeful when it allows you to connect with and support others in a uniquely meaningful way. Your deepest wounds become your greatest contributions. This principle has driven some of humanity's most profound contributions. 12-step programs were founded by people transforming their own addiction struggles into support for others. Some of our most impactful therapies were developed by practitioners healing their own wounds. Countless humanitarian organizations began with someone who transformed personal tragedy into service. The community mirror also provides essential feedback for your continuing growth. As you share your wisdom, you'll discover which parts resonate most strongly with others, which aspects need further clarification in your own understanding, and what new questions arise that drive your learning deeper. And as we'll explore with our next principle, each painful experience contains multiple layers of wisdom waiting to be extracted and integrated. Part 8. Wisdom Extraction Exercise. Have you ever had that moment where years after a difficult experience you suddenly realize it taught you something invaluable, something you wouldn't have learned any other way? Most of us have these insights occasionally by chance, but what if you could systematically extract wisdom from every challenging experience without waiting years for the light bulb moment? Most people endure painful experiences, eventually move past them, and miss the rich veins of wisdom hidden within their struggles. They endure the cost of the lesson without collecting its full value. But there's a way to ensure that every difficult experience yields its complete treasure of insights, strengths, and growth. This brings us to The wisdom extraction exercise is a structured practice for identifying and articulating the specific lessons, strengths, and insights gained from painful experiences. For each challenging situation you face, you deliberately extract at least 3 specific lessons or strengths you've gained. This builds what I call your emotional intelligence arsenal, a collection of hard-won wisdom that becomes increasingly valuable over time. Here's how it works. Choose a significant, challenging experience from your life. It could be recent or from your past. Then ask yourself these 3 specific questions. First, what did this experience teach me about myself that I didn't know before? This might reveal hidden strengths, unconscious patterns, or core values that became clear only through being tested. Second, what did this experience teach me about others or life in general? These are the broader insights about human nature, relationships, or how the world works that emerge through your struggle. Third, what strengths or capabilities did I develop because of this challenge? These are the skills, perspectives, or qualities that were forged in the fire of your difficulty. Write down your answers, being as specific as possible. Vague platitudes like "everything happens for a reason" don't serve you here. Look for concrete, actionable wisdom. I learned that I need to check my assumptions before reacting, or I discovered my capacity to remain centered even when others are in chaos. What makes this exercise so powerful is that it transforms how you view both past and future challenges. Past difficulties are no longer just painful memories, but sources of valuable wisdom that continue to serve you. Future challenges become not just obstacles to overcome, but opportunities to expand your wisdom further. This practice also fundamentally changes your relationship with difficult emotions. When you know you'll extract value from every painful experience, you become less afraid of emotional difficulty. You still feel the pain, but you also recognize it as the necessary cost of wisdom that can't be gained any other way. I recommend keeping a wisdom inventory, a journal or document where you collect these extracted insights. Review it regularly, especially when facing new challenges. You'll be amazed at how wisdom gained in one context can illuminate completely different situations. This exercise builds a particular kind of resilience, not just the ability to bounce back from difficulty, but the capacity to bounce forward, wiser and more equipped for whatever comes next. Each challenge becomes a deposit in your wisdom account, rather than just a painful withdrawal from your emotional energy. Some of the most successful, impactful people throughout history have practiced forms of this wisdom extraction, whether formally or informally. They don't just endure challenges, they mine them for every ounce of insight, turning obstacles into advantages. The cumulative effect of this practice over time is remarkable. As your wisdom inventory grows, you'll notice patterns and themes emerging, core lessons that life seems particularly intent on teaching you. These recurring lessons often point toward your unique purpose and contribution. And as we'll discover with our next method, even your most triggered moments contain doorways to freedom if you know how to use them. Part 9. Triggered to Transcendent. Have you ever had that moment when someone says or does something seemingly small and suddenly you're flooded with emotion that seems way out of proportion? That feeling when a minor comment sends you spiraling into anger, hurt, or anxiety that feels overwhelming? If so, you've experienced what most people call being triggered. But what most don't realize is that these very triggers hold the key to profound emotional freedom. Most people either try to avoid their triggers entirely or feel ashamed when they get triggered, seeing it as evidence of their lack of emotional control. But what if these triggering moments are actually precisely mapped doorways to your deepest healing and growth? What if the very situations that most activate your emotional wounds are also your greatest opportunities for transformation? This brings us to the triggered to transcendent approach is about using emotional triggers as doorways to freedom. When old wounds surface through triggering events, instead of seeing this as a problem or failure, you learn to view these moments as opportunities to clear blocked energy and evolve beyond limitation. Think of it this way. A trigger is simply a present moment situation that activates unresolved emotional energy from the past. The intensity of your reaction isn't really about what's happening now, it's about what happened then. This is actually good news because it means each trigger is pointing precisely to where healing is needed. Here's how to practice this approach. The next time you notice yourself having an outsized emotional reaction to something, pause, take a breath, then say to yourself, "This is a healing opportunity." Rather than judging yourself for being triggered or blaming the trigger, become curious about what's being revealed. Ask yourself, what does this strong reaction tell me about what needs healing within me? What old wound or belief is being activated? If this trigger could speak, what would it say needs my attention? The key insight is that triggers aren't random, they're specific and personal. The exact things that trigger you are revealing exactly where your growth edge lies. Someone who fears abandonment gets triggered by potential signs of rejection. Someone who struggles with worthiness gets triggered by perceived criticism. Your unique trigger map is like an X, marking the treasure of your next evolutionary step. This approach transforms your relationship with triggering events. Instead of dreading or avoiding them, you begin to recognize them as growth accelerators. Uncomfortable, yes, but incredibly valuable. Each trigger becomes not just something to manage or endure, but a precise invitation to freedom. A practical technique for working with triggers is what I call trigger tracking. Keep a simple journal where you note what specifically triggered you, what emotion arose, where did you feel it in your body, what did it remind you of from your past, what belief about yourself or life seemed threatened. Over time, you'll notice patterns emerging, specific types of situations or dynamics that consistently activate you. These patterns reveal the core wounds or limiting beliefs that are ready for transformation. Rather than seeing these as problems to fix, view them as invitations to expand beyond old limitations. What makes this approach so powerful is that it transforms your most painful moments into your most potent growth opportunities. The very situations that once seemed like evidence of your lack of progress become catalysts for your evolution. This doesn't mean you deliberately seek out triggering situations or stay in harmful environments. It means that when triggers inevitably occur in daily life, you have a framework for using them constructively rather than being derailed by them. With practice, something remarkable happens. The intensity and duration of your triggered responses naturally begin to decrease. What once would have thrown you off center for days might eventually pass through in minutes. Not because you're suppressing your reactions, but because you're processing them differently, as information rather than identity, as opportunity rather than obstacle. And as we'll explore in our final method, the ultimate transformation comes from embracing not just parts of your emotional experience, but your full emotional spectrum. Part 10. Integration Practice. Have you ever noticed how we tend to embrace certain emotions while rejecting others? How we chase happiness but run from sadness? Celebrate confidence but hide vulnerability? The truth is, most of us have been taught to divide our emotional experiences into good feelings we should have and bad feelings we should avoid. But what if this very division is what's keeping us from experiencing the wholeness, authenticity, and power we're seeking? Throughout this journey, we've explored various approaches to transforming emotional pain into wisdom. But there's one final essential piece that brings it all together. A practice that doesn't just transform individual painful emotions, but revolutionizes your entire relationship with your emotional life. Let me introduce you to the integration practice. Is about regularly acknowledging and embracing both your light and shadow aspects, recognizing that the parts of yourself you hide or reject actually contain untapped power. Embracing your full emotional spectrum creates a sense of wholeness that nothing else can provide. Here's the core insight. Every emotion you experience, without exception, contains wisdom, energy, and gifts. When you reject certain emotions as negative or bad, you don't actually eliminate them. You simply push them into your unconscious, where they continue to influence your choices and reactions without your awareness or consent. Think of it this way. Emotions are like messengers carrying important information. When you welcome only the messengers bringing good news and turn away those with challenging information, you miss crucial guidance about your needs, boundaries, and deepest values. The practice of integration involves 3 key steps. First, recognition, acknowledging all emotions without judgment, including those you've been taught to reject. Second, dialogue, getting curious about what each emotion is trying to tell you. And third, expression, finding healthy ways to embody and channel the energy of every emotion. A powerful integration exercise is creating what I call an emotional inventory. Make a list of emotions you're comfortable experiencing and expressing. Then make a second list of emotions you tend to avoid, suppress, or judge in yourself. For each emotion in the second list, ask, what wisdom or strength might this emotion be trying to bring me? How might my life be different if I could access this energy when appropriate? What makes this practice so transformative is that it resolves the internal conflict that drains so much of our energy. When you're no longer fighting against certain emotions or parts of yourself, that energy becomes available for creation, connection, and contribution instead. Consider how much energy it takes to maintain the division between acceptable and unacceptable feelings. Think about how exhausting it is to constantly monitor your emotional experience, censoring what doesn't fit your ideal self-image. Integration releases all that energy for living fully instead. This practice also transforms your relationships. When you can acknowledge and work with your full emotional spectrum, you develop greater capacity to be present with others in their complete humanity as well. Your compassion expands because you're no longer triggered by emotions in others that you reject in yourself. The ultimate paradox of emotional transformation is this: the parts of yourself you've been trying to get rid of are often the very parts that, once integrated, become sources of your greatest gifts and power. Your sensitivity becomes your empathy. Your anger becomes your boundary-setting clarity. Your grief becomes your depth of connection. Integration doesn't mean all emotions feel good. They don't, and they shouldn't. It means all emotions serve a purpose in your human experience. It means developing the capacity to work with the full range of your emotional responses, rather than being limited to only those deemed acceptable. As you practice integration over time, you'll experience a profound shift from fragmentation to wholeness. Instead of being divided against yourself, constantly trying to embrace certain parts while rejecting others, you become a unified presence, authentic, powerful, and complete. This integration is the culmination of our journey from pain to wisdom. It's not just about transforming individual painful experiences. It's about transforming your entire relationship with the emotional dimension of being human. Conclusion. As we come to the end of our journey together, I hope you're beginning to see emotional pain not as something to merely survive or overcome, but as the raw material for your greatest wisdom and most authentic self. The 10 methods we've explored aren't just techniques. They're pathways to a completely new relationship with your emotional experience. Remember, transformation isn't about avoiding pain or pretending it doesn't exist. It's about meeting your pain with presence, curiosity, and compassion, allowing it to teach you what only it can teach. Your most difficult experiences contain precisely the wisdom you need for your unique journey. What would change if you approached every emotional challenge as an opportunity for alchemy, for turning lead into gold? How might your life transform if you saw yourself not as a victim of your circumstances, but as an alchemist of your experiences? The truth is, we don't become wise despite our pain. We become wise because of it, because we've learned how to transform it. The depth of your wisdom will always be proportional to the depth of your transformed suffering. This journey of transformation isn't a one-time event, but a continuous practice. Some days you'll navigate it with grace, other days you'll struggle. Be gentle with yourself either way. The path isn't meant to be perfect, it's meant to be authentic. Remember that you're not alone in this journey. We all experience emotional pain, and we all have the capacity to transform it into wisdom. When you share your transformational journey with others, you create ripples of healing that extend far beyond yourself. I invite you to choose just one of these methods to practice this week. Notice what shifts. Notice what opens. Notice what becomes possible when you relate to your emotional pain, not as your enemy, but as your teacher. The wisdom you seek isn't waiting somewhere in the future when all your problems are solved. It's available right now, hidden within the very experiences you've been trying to avoid or overcome. Your pain, fully met and transformed, is the doorway to the wisdom that is uniquely yours to embody and share. Thank you for walking this path with me today. May your journey of transformation continue to unfold with courage, compassion, and wonder.